That's right.
Okay, awesome. So, for those of you who haven't met me in the past, my name is Walt Miner. I'm a senior director at the Linux Foundation, and I'll give a little introduction of myself in a second. Most of you are probably wondering, where's Tim? So I know Tim Bird often speaks in this slot about embedded Linux. And as you can see, last year, or actually earlier this year, rather, in Amsterdam, Tim announced that he would be stepping down as the chairperson of the, from being the program committee chair for the Embedded Linux conference, and that I would be taking over. Tim he plans to retire from Sony next year. So, as a way of Tim, this is on the right hand side here. You can see we had a little plaque for Tim that we gave him for his many years of service, starting the CE Linux forum and the Embedded Linux conference. And so you might wonder, well, who's this guy? So I've been the automotive grade Linux development and community manager since 2014. I counted it up. I have over 30 years of embedded software experience, which mostly means that I'm old. I've been involved with Linux for 20 years now at Monte Vista, at Mentor Graphics, at Continental Automotive, and at Motorola, both in the mobile devices group and the telematics group. And prior to that, prior to joining Motorola's telematics group, I did defense electronics, radar jammers, and things like that at both ITT and at Northrop Grumman. So if you haven't met me before, I have been to Japan, I think about 30 times over the past 20 years, many times since I started with the Linux Foundation in 2014. And a few years ago, I took a class to learn how to make sushi when I was in Tokyo. I went to the market, the sushi market, the fish market in the morning, had a tour. I took a sushi class, but I'm still not ready to be a sushi master. But Yamaguchi-san, who's on the line, he made me this image of Gemini. This is my aspiration someday to open my sushi shop, I guess. So normally, Tim does this talk, I guess, a few times a year at the Jamboree. It periodically takes a look at the status of embedded Linux. There were a lot of slides, and I actually went. He gives a version of this talk at embedded Linux conferences and at the Jamboree. I actually went and I watched the whole presentation that he did last time at the Jamboree. It was about an hour and a half. And I don't have that much time, and I don't want that much time. I don't want to bore you. So I've kind of taken Tim's advice to me was, hey, do with it what you want. Take the presentation, make of it what you want, do it what you want. So I have a little story here I'm going to have at the end about how I tried to do that and improve this. I have some further ideas. Next time we do this, how to improve this. Some things I want to cover that I didn't get a chance to cover. But so this is a little. It's got a lot of the stuff that Tim had, but it's a little different. So I hope you enjoy it. I really would appreciate some feedback after the Jamboree. Tell me if there's something you want me to cover in the future. I did remove a bunch of content that I find was not very helpful. But I gave you pointers to find that content. So usual outline is Linux kernel, technology areas, industry news, community, and conclusions. So starting with the kernel, less than a week ago, actually on Sunday, I guess, the Linux kernel version 6.18 was released. and that followed the usual 9-week, 63-day development cycle. So since the last Jamboree, I really only want to cover what's happened since the last Jamboree. You can always go and refer to the slides from the last one to get more updates on the previous kernel versions. So I'm going to just cover really what happened in 6.17 and 6.18. For 6.19, the merge window is open. It's usually open for a few weeks. I think Linus said it may be open a little longer, and he also anticipates that there will be an extra week in the development cycle due to the holidays. So we'll probably have a 70-day cycle this time. So in 6.18, 6.17 rather, which was released at the end of September, over 2,000 developers participated. There were over 13,000 non-merge change sets that were merged. Kind of the big topics that were included was support for basically uniprocessor configurations were removed. Everybody will have to run an SMP kernel from now on. USB audio had an update where it was offloaded. There was actually another major update in 6.18 that I'll talk about. New RTAP monitor for finding real-time application problems, which is pretty interesting. But I gave you here some links to LWN. You can get the full set of changes as described by LWN in the 6.17 release. There's basically every release cycle, LWN does, Linux Weekly News does 2 articles on the merge window. What were the major features that were merged? And so I just tried to, the one for 6.17 was done by Tim actually. And the one for 6.18 I did. So for 6.18, which was just released, there were, again, over 2,000 developers, 22,134 developers, and over 13,000 non-merge change sets, once again. Probably the biggest thing, actually the biggest item that was changed, in fact, Linus Torvalds showed up as the #1 committer by lines, which was that bcachefs was removed from the kernel. So, and there's a little, I'm not going to get into it. There's a background story about the developer and having some issues with code of conduct things. I'm not going to get into that right now. The audio subsystem had another major update where now they have scope-based resource management, which is pretty exciting. I gave you a link to a story about how that works. Kernel namespaces can now be referred to using file handles rather than just the old way of doing it. The audit subsystem, so we can now have multiple Linux security modules being enabled, and the audit subsystem can help track that. Rust continues to grow in importance in the kernel, and I think both in 6.17 and 6.18, there were many Rust binding updates. So a lot of activity going on in the kernel in Rust, and I think there was a quote from Greg Kroh-Hartman last year that Rust is the future of the kernel. So that's pretty exciting. And then there was a new VirtIO SPI driver that was added using VirtIO spec 1.4. But for the complete list of all the nitty-gritty detail, I won't say all the nitty-gritty details, but for a lot of details that just there's just too many things that were added to go through. But those 2 articles that I point to here will give you a really good idea of what the major changes were in the kernel for 6.18. So at this point, we now have 2 kernels, we'll say the stable kernel being maintained 6.17, which is already up to 6.17.10. 6.18, which was just released, and then we have a few long-term stable, a few LTS releases, 6.12, 6.6, going back all the way to 5.4, which is up to its 301st version. And again, you can find this exact information here on kernel.org. And you know, as we just showed, time continues to march on for the kernel. In the past, Tim had a lot of different slides detailing the nitty-gritty details of a lot of the subsystems that were worked on in the kernel releases. You can just go look that up. It's a little dry. I didn't really think it would be exciting for the presentation, so I kind of cut that out. But if you think it's something you want me to include in the future, I'm more than happy to do that. So that's the kernel itself. Now let's take a look at some technology areas. A lot of good presentations this year. We had 2 ELCs, ELC Europe in August in Amsterdam, ELC North America in June in Denver. Embedded Recipes was a very good conference. I didn't attend it, but I did watch some of the presentations. So there's some links to see some of the presentations there. I was trying to get an update from Tim in the last day or two about the boot time special, the boot time SIG. I think it's still going. Basically, this is just a copy of his slides from September. I believe there's still the monthly conference call. Unfortunately, I could not find the details on it. So I did search through this stuff. But if I do get an update if I do get an updated email from Tim, I will update these slides. This boot time stuff is really, really important. You know, I've probably spent 20 since I started with Motorola on the Linux Java phones in 2005. Boot time has been an issue that everybody is trying to resolve, and so you've got you know, continuing. Was there a question?
Teams で、今 Teams の画面あるじゃないですか。で、翻訳出せるじゃないですか。ちょっと一瞬こっち、これ翻訳とか。さっきの。
会場の声入っちゃってますよ。聞こえますか？会場の声入っちゃってますよ。
Was there a question from someone or?
No question. I think that
they're just not muted.
Yeah, you can go on. Please go on.
Okay, so you can see, there's a lot of different people working on boot time reduction or boot time monitoring, and between Google, Qualcomm, Sony, Red Hat, and TI. This was when we were in both in Denver and in Amsterdam for both ELCs this year. This got a lot of interest. There were a lot of talks. I did a quick search. Next week is OSS Japan. There really aren't any boot talks next week. We're going to talk in a little bit about how we're going to maybe fix that next year. But not a lot of embedded talks in general at OSS Japan. So build tools and distros. So the Yocto project. Yeah, so Walnut Scar is still the latest. I have another Yocto slide coming up, and I can't remember the name of the 5.3 release. It's a silly name. But the 5.3 release has been delayed a little bit. I've got a little discussion about the Yocto project and its releases and what's going on there in a few slides. BitBake setup has been coming online. That's the major thing coming online in the 5.3 release. Basically, it's an attempt to get you to produce a complete Linux system with a single command, but there's a lot more to it. And there's a lot of documentation being created by the Yocto project as to what this means. There's also CAS to help you get started with the Yocto project. Buildroot is the other major embedded build system. They 20.25. The current stable release is 2025.8. The next stable release is 2025.11, which I saw was in RC2 today. The current long-term stable release is 2025.02.8. So they'll be. I don't know how long they support their releases. I don't remember their LTSs. So industry news. This is just a list of embedded projects that the Linux Foundation has, including my favorite project, Automotive Grade Linux. There's the Civil Infrastructure Project, which is I know a lot of the folks in Japan work on as well. Drone code has gotten very popular, gotten a lot of activity in the last few years, especially with the war in Russia. There's been a lot of activity there. ELISA, kernel CI, OpenChain, OpenSSF, and Yocto. Some updates on those projects. The Yocto project is expanding their staff. They hired Paul Barker, who some of you may know. He's been very active, and he was active in the AGL community for a while. He's very active in Yocto and Open Embedded. I know he worked for Renaissance for a while. So he's now been hired as they're calling it the Ecosystem Engineering and Operations Lead. So Paul will basically be augmenting Richard Purdy and his work and try to offload some of what Richard does, so Richard has some more time to do what he likes to do. Steve Sackerman, who's been their LTS maintainer, he's retiring, so they hired a new LTS maintainer who started this month as well in December. Release 5.3, which is WinLadder, that's the name of it, I always forget. That's been delayed a little bit due to this bit-baked setup and the maturity of it. There's the difficult thing for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't realize this yet, is that Pocky is being deprecated in 5.3. In fact, it has been deprecated in 5.3. And so they really need to make sure that they have the proper tooling in place and the documentation in place so that for the last 13 years of the project, the Yocto project has always told any newcomer to start with Pocky and work from there. And a lot of companies are using Pocky as their upstream. So you won't be able to do that anymore. AGL, Automotive Grade Linux, and a few other projects, but since we do everything in the open, we have already done this work on our next branch to reformat our stuff to use bit-baked setup. But as we go through the next 6 months 4 or 5 months until April, with the Walnusker release, that will be the next LTS in April. And so we really need to work to mature that, make sure the documentation is there, because people are going to be in for a bit of a surprise who are using Pocky as their upstream when we get to Walnusker. ScarthGap, the 5.0 LTX long-term support release, will be supportive until March of 28, so another 2+ years. The Kirkstone LTS will be supported until March of 2026, so it'll be ending soon. And then recently, the Yocto project, there's a lot of interest around what embedded companies should do about the CRA. It's the new European Cyber Resiliency Act that's going into effect next year, end of next year. So the Octo project has started a CRA working group, and that's open to people to join. I believe OpenChain will be doing something about that as well. Talk about OpenChain in a second. Automotive grade Linux. Next week is Automotive Linux Summit in Tokyo. There'll be keynotes by Honda, by Panasonic, and AGL during OSSJ. We will be announcing our SDV reference platform, which is called SODEV. So look for some presentations about SODEV as well as the announcement next week. Some of the folks on this call are, highly involved with SODEV. Our current LTS is called Quirky Quillback. That's version 17. We'll be using that. The latest release on that was just last week as well, November 28th. And then coming up in March will be our Ultimate Unagi release, 21.0. And basically because the Yocto main master will be going from 5.x to 6.x, like Quirky Quillback with Kirkstone, we will continue to support Unagi for the lifetime of ScratGap. So we're looking forward to that. And then after Unagi, we will switch over to the Walnusker 6.0 release for our master on AGL. Elisa, a lot of activity with Elisa. I should have given you a link. There was just an Elisa working group, an Elisa workshop. Sorry, that was held last week. The slides are not available. I mean, the slides are available online, but not the videos yet. They are forming a railway safety working group, which I know is probably of interest to some of the members who are also in the civil infrastructure platform. OpenChain. I know a lot of you are interested in OpenChain. Shane Coughlin announced last week that he's leaving OpenChain at the end of December. I should have put a link. I'm sorry. I'll add it to the slide deck before I send it. I have a link to the OpenChain announcement. They have not announced who will be replacing Shane yet. So if you know Shane and you see him around next week, wish him well. He's only said that he has a personal endeavor that he's been wanting to try, and so that's what he's going to be doing. He's not even going to be with the Linux Foundation anymore. So I think that's a big loss. OpenChain, that's been his baby for the last few years. Space grade Linux. So there'll be a space grade Linux keynote next week at Open Source Summit Japan, being given by Ramon. So that should be exciting. They've had a lot of work going on there. So miscellaneous. I had a couple miscellaneous topics. One is Amazon Vega OS, and the other is are you worried about AI world domination? I got a few thoughts about that. So Amazon in their products, like their Fire Stick and their tablets and Alexa, have used something called Fire OS for the last, I don't even know how long, 10 years, which is basically a customized version of Android that they've used. They have elected, starting with their Amazon Fire Stick 4K Select, that's quite a mouthful, that they released in November. They're now building their products on Linux, directly on Linux with running React Native applications. So it supports obviously 4K video. It supports outside applications. It's running a MediaTek quad-core ARM processor. It's only got 1 GB of RAM, amazingly, and it uses Mali GPU for graphics. So if you look at the specs, their claim performance is quite impressive. One of their main goals, they say, is for security, which is to eliminate side loading of Android apps on their devices. We'll see. I'm sure somebody will figure out a way to jailbreak it. It never takes people too long. But this is interesting news. So you have people more and more, and I hear this in the automotive space, who are reluctant to have their operating system controlled by Google. So Amazon has finally made the switch, and they're now got their own Vega OS. So this is very interesting news. I know a lot of people are worried that AI is going to take over the world, and so Yamaguchi-san, I should have included the picture again. Yamaguchi-san created the picture of me at my sushi restaurant using Gemini 3, and a lot of people are saying it's the best ever. Meanwhile, Google has announced that they have these TPUs that they're using that are much cheaper, and they're competing with NVIDIA. That's actually, I think, pretty good news. I think the price between the competition between the major vendors like Google and OpenAI and with ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude, as well as the Chinese LLM vendors, now with more and more hardware competition, I think the price will continue to come down. But it's interesting. For this talk, I use AI for different things. I've not really been able to figure out a good way to incorporate it into too much of my workflow. But for this talk today, last week, I wanted to see if the new Gemini 3 deep thinking and research mode could help with this presentation. So Tim had given me a bunch of possible ideas for topics. So I took Tim's ideas and the full presentation from September, created a prompt for Gemini 3, and it sat there and it thought for about 20 minutes, and it delivered an 18-page report, which included 68 citations. Pretty cool, I thought. I can work from this. And in one step, I told it to export the report into Google Docs, and I could easily fact check its work because it cited everything. It had citations and footnotes. It was great, or so I thought. The bad, most of the information it produced was horribly out of date. Despite, it showed me all of the web searches as it was doing it performed. And really, it was only able to give me information through kernel 6.13. It attempted to summarize the embedded Linux environment in a paragraph or two in 2025, and it really just regurgitated things that Tim had already we included in the prompt between the presentation in September and some other things. And so I asked it to really get to the ugly. I asked it to summarize the report and give me 15 to 20 PowerPoint slides. Which it summarized it in text, but told me it could not create a PowerPoint document, or this is a Google product, export it to a Google Slides presentation. But it did create a Python script for me that would create a PowerPoint. Okay, that's interesting. So I ran the Python script, and it was riddled with really basic syntax errors. And I would point it would fail. And I would say, okay, you failed on this line. I would give it the line, and it would say, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Here's the version that fixes it. And the version that fixed it would have the same exact error. And this went on and on for, 5 or 6 iterations. So finally, I hand coded the fix for the Python script. And then when all the syntax errors were fixed, then it failed on a runtime error. And for the life of me, I could not figure out the runtime error. I fed it into Gemini. It could not. It just spit it out the same errors. So then it got weird. I decided to take the Python script and put it into ChatGPT. So ChatGPT actually fixed the Python script, ran the first time, created the PowerPoint for me. And ChatGPT summarized the report as well. And I would say that Gemini did a slightly better job of the summary, but ChatGPT could automatically export its summary into PowerPoint or into Google Slides. So just for the heck of it, we tried running this on some local LLMs with the same exact prompt, and they did a terrible job. I listed some of the LLMs that we used. So basically, you know, this was, I would say, a failure. I actually did not use anything from the report in this presentation. I don't think the data was out, the information was out of date. It wasn't very useful. I went off and did my own research in the end. Then just for the heck of it, I have another thing that I'm doing, and a week or two ago I asked Claude and ChatGPT to perform some analysis of a CSV file. Claude did a great job. ChatGPT did a lousy job. But then I tried to upload an updated CSV the next week, and Claude actually said he could not upload CSV files. And in order to do that, I had to change a setting, and the setting didn't actually exist. So bottom line, I'm not too worried about world domination of AI yet. It does some interesting stuff. I think that we're at the limit of where we can get with scaling these things, and these companies are all losing money, and I don't really see how this ends well for them. Anyway, that's my experience with AI recently. If you have any better experience, let me know. I've tried a few other things, had mixed luck with it over the last year. If you have anything interesting to let me know about, I will be in Japan next week, or you can shoot me an email. Community. So conferences. I don't know why that went that way. So really good slate of conferences next year. OSS Japan is, of course, next week with plumbers, as well as Automotive Linux Summit. FOSDEM is the free open source developers conference in Brussels. It is enormous. There's usually 7,000 or 8,000 people there. I am the co-chair of the embedded mobile and automotive dev room there, basically the conference track. If you've never been to FOSDEM, it's not like nothing you've ever seen before, but there's a lot of great content. Highly recommend you either, if you can go, that's great. If you can't, they post all of their content, all of the tracks, all the talks on their website. Another great embedded conference is Embedded World Congress in Nuremberg in March. That's actually more of a trade show. There is a conference element to it. Again, it's a chance. It's the one time all year where all of the major embedded companies, software vendors, silicon vendors, application developers get together. There's usually 5 or 6 halls full of companies there. It's a great chance to see what's going on there. I highly recommend, if you ever get a chance to go to Nuremberg for Embedded World. I know Yamaguchi-san, I think, will be joining me this year. It's been announced that Open Source Summit and ELC North America will be in Minneapolis in May. Embedded Recipes will be in Nice, France in May, at the end of May. Open Source Summit and ELC Europe will be in Prague, October 7th through 9th. And I'm happy to announce and pleased to announce that next year, as part of OSS Japan, we will have Automotive Linux Summit, but we're also going to try out an ELC Asia next year. So, there's usually a lack of embedded content. I know I see the heart there. I'm really excited about this. We're going to try this, see what kind of interest there is. So we're going to brand it as ELC Asia. We're hoping to get embedded companies from throughout Asia to join. So it should be very exciting. I think we'll be officially announcing that next week. But the OSS Japan is already on the Linux Foundation events page. Other than that, conclusions. I think the embedded Linux ecosystem is strong. We have, I didn't get a chance to run all the stats, but I know Tim usually provides an update on all of the commits that were done by the embedded Linux consultancies like, Bootlin, Galia, Collabora, etc. Linguatronics or Linuxtronics, Bay Libre, etc. I didn't get a chance to run those stats, but the embedded, the number of contributions from the embedded ecosystem is is very robust. I think 2026 will be a great year for embedded Linux, and I think just in general, I think we're at or near the limits of scaling for LLMs. This is my other conclusion, and we're going to need another approach. I don't know what the approach is. I follow a lot of people there, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I know there's a lot of use of agents and MCP that are very interesting, but the ecosystem, the infrastructure we need for this is just so expensive and so costly to run. So that was it for my slides. Are there any questions? Any comments? Do you wish Tim was back? I don't blame you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Motai, and I will be very most.
I couldn't quite hear that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you speak a little louder?
Oh, yes, okay. My name is Motai, and I will be temporary host. We are based in Japan, and the opportunity to touch opportunity information or to interact directly with a community such as yourself quite limited. So we are grateful for this great opportunity.
Well, I have a talk next week, and I will be in Tokyo next week. So if stop by and meet me, I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Sure. So let's give a we can't really show to appreciation. Actually,
I didn't quite catch the last part. It broke up a little bit.
So anyway, does anyone have any comments from or remote? どなたかご質問ありますか？元からでも大丈夫です。
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm happy to do this. Stop by and see me next week, and while I'm in Tokyo, and we can maybe work on some ideas to collaborate further in next year. Yeah, if you have any questions, I'll hang on for a little bit. If you have any questions, I'll hang on for a little bit. See if there's anything in the chat box. My background is space. Yes.
Any comments?
This is Masanori Ito. So this is not a question, but so just a comment, small comment. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned, so this is not a question, but so just I want to share what I've been thinking about. So very recently, including with Walt. And so I agree with you that the embedded ecosystem is strong, and but so at least in Japan, we are, so in my understanding, we are facing a kind of human resource issues, problems in the embedded engineers. And in this sense, so what I'm thinking about, what expecting is the collaboration across multiple organizations or project or organizations. Here, I mean not only just a project under Linux Foundation, such as ELISA or Zephyr, but also so other foundations like Eclipse or Sophie or those kind of people. So this, yeah, and I hope so this is just a rough idea, but I hope this makes sense somehow. And I want to discuss with you next week in person Tokyo. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Ida-san. I'm also just to let you know, I've also been working on how to collaborate with universities. I think we know that universities, there's a lot of students who are learning computer science, but they're not really learning about embedded development or really even open source. And so in the last few months, I've started trying to work with the University of North Carolina State here, near where I live. I also have recently had some contact with a university in Italy, in Salerno, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to make a presentation to the AGL advisory board next week, how we can encourage collaboration with university students to get them and basically educate them about what open source is, and educate them about what embedded software is. And maybe, we AGL, and I'm sure some of the companies on the call have participated in things like Google Summer of Code and Linux Foundation mentorship programs. How can we draw more students into this in Japan and the US? Because frankly, at least with AGL, I don't see the candidates from Japan or from Asia, except for India. I don't see the candidates from Asia. How do we basically engage the students directly where there's interest? And what I learned in Raleigh when I went to All Things Open is that many of the professors that are teaching this stuff don't know anything about these topics. So I'm working with these universities. I'm starting with a couple universities to try to figure out a strategy. I've also been talking to Shua Khan, who does some of this outreach for the Linux Foundation. I think that's important. Like I said, Ito-san, let's talk some more next week about your ideas about how to encourage collaboration.
Thanks for collaborating with academia, university folks, a very good idea. And in this sense, so as a part of AGL community, our team visited Taipei, Taiwan, this August, and there we to attend the conference so-called COSCP. Yes, and and for Japanese folks, it's like OSC in case of Japan, and there we saw lots of university students, and some of them were actually working on embedded things. For example, battery EV racing team, and this means they have to work on the hard real-time things too. I felt they are excellent, and in this sense too. So from our standpoint, starting from the Asian students, I think we can collaborate with the worldwide activities that Walt mentioned.
We get a lot of students at Embedded World as well. there's a student day on Thursday.
I think that's all for from me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
ありがとうございます。There are no more questions, so thank you very much for it. So we are looking forward to see you next week. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ward. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
I'm just typing something to the chat window now. Okay. All right. You guys can continue. I'm just going to hang on and see if anybody responds to my chat, and I'll stay on for another 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward, for your time.
At this time, we try
Thank you so
to,
much.
the most in Japanese.